Okay, call to order. This is a special board meeting of July 27, 2020. It is now 6:06. We will begin with a roll call.
President Nguyen.
Here.
Vice President Lay.
Here.
Clerk Herrera.
Here.
Member Cortese.
Here.
Member Chavez.
Here.
So welcome to this special board meeting. Please note that the meeting is being streamed live through Zoom video conferencing. Translation services are available in Spanish and Vietnamese and will be available by members of the board and or staff. Anyone requesting to address the board on any agendized open session item may do so by raising the virtual hand in Zoom to request to speak. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Please reference the agenda item number in your public comment. The board is not able to respond to items that are not on the agenda or any personnel issues. Your comment will be noted and will be directed to the superintendent or appropriate staff members for response. So let me see. So we have 13 panelists. I don't see anyone raising their hand. Attendees, we have 4. I don't see anyone raising their hand to speak neither. So we'll continue with the agenda item. With the adoption of agenda, actually. This is an area where superintendent or board members may request that items be removed from the agenda for consideration or carried to future board meeting for consideration or action. Do we have any requests from board member or superintendent to have item removed from the agenda for consideration?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, I don't see any from board member neither. So continue with agenda item number 4, which is a presentation, discussion, and or action regarding voter survey results for potential partial tax on November 2020 election ballot. Superintendent, this is yours.
So back on June 25th, we had a follow-up discussion with the board and Dale Scott regarding the potential for going out for a parcel tax. And the board authorized staff to work with Mr. Scott and his company to do polling in the month of July. And then based on that polling, to make a decision of whether or not to hold this special board meeting. And as you'll find out through the presentation tonight, the polling was not that favorable, except for the lowest amount. The lowest amount actually reached the 2/3 threshold. And so because of that threshold and that low amount, we thought it was still worthwhile to hold the board meeting tonight for board discussion. So let me invite Dale Scott in and let me pull up the presentation. And Dale, good evening, welcome.
Thank you. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. Is that?
Yes, we're hearing you well, Mr. Scott.
Chris, do you want me to just jump in?
Please.
Okay. Let me start by talking a little bit about who the voters are, and then we will go into the presentation. Now, this slide that I put up front is a breakdown of your registered voters in the district, 261,000 voters. Heavily Democratic, as you can see, and this obviously you know. But I think what is interesting is this table on the left, the chart on the left-hand side, which is the voter turnout. This is actually a little undercounted. This comes from political data, and political data is only showing those people that are still registered. But you can see the impact of the presidential election. If you look at the dark gray bar in November of 16, 60% turnout. It was actually a little bit higher than that because some people have moved away. And that was the same also in November of 18. So the point is that presidential elections, as we've discussed before, have the highest amount of turnout. The reason that's important, especially for a parcel tax or any other type of bond, is because you have a very large number of Democrats and also a very large number of declined to state, but they tend to be more consistent voters in a presidential election, and they tend to be more supportive of measures such as this. Regarding this people that we surveyed, and I'll get to those exact numbers. If I could go to the next slide, please, slide 3. I just want to give you a quick run through of who these people were. They were all registered voters. They all said that they were going to vote in the next presidential election. And here is the age distribution. Nothing terribly unusual about this. Not a lot of voters between 18 and 24, and a fair amount over the age of 65, almost, well, about a third over the age of 65. On page 4, you see the living situation of the voters. We asked them, do they own a house or a condo? And this is important, obviously, for parcel tax. Or do they rent, or do they live with their family? The vast majority own a house or a condo where they currently live. So when we're asking them about a parcel tax, this is something they are going, 61%, they are going to pay. And I think that's important since the word parcel tax is in all of these measures. And then on page 5, and I think this is an especially important question, we asked voters, again, we're only talking about voters, you know, boards tend to think, you're not so much, but some of the smaller districts, they tend to think of their constituents as parents. But in fact, you can see here, when we ask the question, do you have or have you ever had any children or grandchildren who attended or are now attending a school in the East Side Union High School District? 59% said no, that they did not have any children. Now, because you're a high school district, there may be some of them that have younger children in earlier grades, but still you have a very, very large percentage of voters who are not associated with the district in any way. They didn't have children in the past, they don't have grandchildren, they don't have children in the system now. So keep that in mind as we're going through these numbers. And then finally, before we jump into the survey, I wanted to show you what I think is a very interesting table. This is an analysis of all parcel tax elections for K-14 districts in the state of California since 2008. And I've divided it into 2 buckets, if you will. The districts, the group of districts at the top of the page are those districts that are on the ballot with a new parcel tax, similar to what you're talking about. So asking voters to implement a new parcel tax. And then we've broken it down by what's the pass rate of special elections, primary elections, presidential and gubernatorial elections. So you can see for those elections, parcel tax elections since 2008, for new parcel taxes, I mean, they're not asking for a replacement, they're not asking for an extension, only 68% of those measures pass. Not very good. I mean, really, that's pretty much where the passage rate was pre-Prop 39 for general obligation bonds. So 2/3 of the measures pass, 1/3 fail. At the bottom of the page, we have those districts that are going onto the ballot, but they already have a parcel tax in place. And they are asking voters if they would either extend the current rate or they would replace it with another rate. And the other rate is always higher. And you can see the remarkable difference in a presidential election, which is highlighted in yellow. That passage rate is 92%. In other words, it's very hard to lose a parcel tax election once you already have gotten into the club. I guess that's the easy way to say it. But getting in that club is very tough. Once you get there, then these are often multi-year financing, multi-year parcel taxes that then are slowly over time increased in size and duration.
Dale,
Yes.
can I ask you a quick question?
Please do.
You know, was looking at the data earlier, and it looks like, you know, the 92%, do we have a sense of how long those parcels are? Because, you know, I don't want to spoiler alert, but, you know, I saw that 3 years was the primo one for the sweet spot for us, which wouldn't even actually take us to the next election, presidential, right?
Yeah,
so
correct.
I don't know, of the 92% that you're looking at here, like, are those 10-year parcels, 5-year, 2-year? I mean, how long do they go?
Good question. They are all over the map. I will say that there's another table which I didn't include. What I found in looking at these is generally parcel tax elections for a shorter period of time don't do as well as those in that 4 to 8 year range. And then there are some that actually are done in perpetuity. There is no sunset date. Aren't a lot of them, but there are a few of those. But yeah, I think doing for 3 years doesn't make sense. You want to do a little bit longer than that, but not, 10 years or 11 years or 12 years. That's where people cash out.
Now, since this would be new, would we fall under the new parcel tax bucket,
Yes,
or are we're not on the extension, right? Even though we've had like bonds. So then technically we're saying that our probability of it passing is 68%. Is that accurate?
I'm saying of those districts that have had new parcel tax elections, only 68% have passed. I wouldn't say that's your probability. I'm saying it's a very tough road to get that in place. Now, let me say that many of these districts that you see, that 32%, the 32% that failed, they failed because they were asking for too much. They failed because their community wasn't ready. They failed because they were trying to do a measure in perpetuity. They failed because their ballot language was poor. So I wouldn't take this as a probability. I would just I want to show you, man, it's a different world when you're saying to extend the parcel tax that has been previously approved by the voters shall blah, 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 as opposed to a new tax. It's just a much higher hurdle.
Thank you.
Let's go to page 8. Just very briefly, this survey was done really quickly over 3 days. 405 completed surveys. We used landlines, cell phones, and also surveys online. And then it was balanced, so we have the right number of Democrats, the right Republicans, age, et cetera, et cetera. It was a very long survey, 16 minutes, and people stuck with it. But keep in mind that it has a margin of error of almost 5% in either direction. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at these numbers. So we started out with a question about COVID-19. I won't read the entire question, but basically we gave them a little bit of information just to remind them what happened, and then said, either from what you know or from what you heard, how would you rate Eastside Union High School District's performance in dealing with the challenges created by the coronavirus? Now remember, 62% of these people don't have children in your school district and never have had children or grandchildren. So the fact that you have 37% of the people saying, I don't know, makes sense, because I don't know. But of those people that know, you did pretty well. Almost a third, maybe 40%. 40% have said excellent or good. Only 9% poor. So I think this is a good sign. We also asked on page 10, however, and I think this is an important question. I think this is a very important question. One more question. Do you agree or disagree? I am proud of how my local community reacted to the crisis. 73% said yes. I think that's great. But then, and an equally important question, question 11, do you agree or disagree? I am scared about the financial impact the crisis will have on my future. 64% yes. Remember, these are voters. I mean, this isn't asking the population at large. These are people who are registered to vote, who say they're going to vote in the presidential election. 64% said they're scared of their financial future. I think that's very important. Very quickly, which way do you get your information about the Eastside Union High School District? The answer is every way. I mean, there's so many, a lot of districts you'll see, most is word of mouth or most is through the media. Here, the newspaper's big, word of mouth is big, Twitter's big. I mean, people get it from everywhere. We then looked at core values to try to get a sense of how they felt about the districts in general. Do you agree or disagree? Our local public schools are our community's most important asset and should be our #1 priority. 68% yes. Now remember, a parcel tax takes 2/3, so 67.7%. So this is not This is not stacking up great right here. You only have 68%. This is usually more like 75 to 80% in other districts. And then we ask the question, and this is good, do you agree or disagree that the quality of schools, that quality schools increase property values? 86%. Excellent. So what we did in this survey, and this is the way all these push surveys work, is after we get the people on the phone, after they're convinced that we're not going to try to sell them something or try to get their password or whatever, we then read them what that ballot language would probably look like. Now we'll change that obviously based on the survey, but probably look like without any other information. And in this case, we split the poll, the group of people that were being polled, into two groups. And this is called a split sample. So in this case, we asked people to enhance STEAM, science, technology, et cetera, protect career and vocational training, and expand student counseling and mental health services at, and we listed all of the schools, shall Eastside Union High School District's measure to establish a $49 per year parcel tax for 5 years, raising $6 million each year, be adopted with senior citizen exemptions, independent oversight, and no funds taken by the state and spent elsewhere. The yes vote on that, including lean yes, was only 60%. Again, you need 2/3 to win. So half of the voters got that number, $49. The other half on page 16 got $24. And it didn't make a difference. This was 59% yes. Same exact question. The only difference was the difference between the 49 and the 24. We then began to ask them various questions about if you knew this, that, and the other, would it affect you? Now, these were randomized, these questions, but they've been reordered so you can see what works and what doesn't work. The black line, about a third of the way over, that's the 67% threshold. And we're looking at the dark blue is a person that says, let's take one for an example. Funds would be used to enhance science, technology, engineering, art, and math programs. If you knew that, would you be more likely or less likely to vote in favor of the measure? The dark blue, they're saying, yes, I'm more likely. The light blue, they're saying it wouldn't make a difference, but they were yes voters to begin with. The gray, they're unsure. On the far end, the dark red, they'd be less likely, and the orange, they say they'd make no difference, but they'd already said they were going to vote no. So what we're looking for are those two blues together. And you can see that only that on this page, all four of them work, not by a lot in some cases, but STEAM, funds would be used to develop career technical education, funds would be used to hire and retain qualified teachers, funds would be used for tutoring and other programs. All are over that 2/3, 67% threshold. Next page, please. It then begins to fall off. Funds would be used for science and math labs. It's over 67%, but barely. Funds would be used to improve Eastside Union High School District schools. That's kind of a broad category, barely over 67. Expenditures would be reviewed by citizens oversight. Doesn't really get you there. Funds would be used to protect and enhance career and vocational classes for students throughout the district. Doesn't really get you there. On page 19, funds would not be taken by the state, could not be taken by the state and spent elsewhere. Doesn't really work. Funds would be used to hire specialized teachers. Doesn't really work. Funds would be used for to expand counseling and mental health services. Doesn't work. And now we get into the really doesn't work. Support the district's current efforts in implementing a comprehensive approach to mental health services. No. Increase teacher salaries. No. Senior citizens would be exempt from paying the parcel tax. This is a complicated one because you have to look at then who's saying this. You know, I mean, is it seniors or is it people that are not seniors? So you have to get down into it, and I will tell you that this is kind of a push. It goes either way. You lose people that aren't seniors, but you gain seniors. So that's, you know, that's kind of a balance out. But here's the tough question. We asked people separately these numbers. We just didn't give them as a smorgasbord. We started with the lowest. Would you be more likely or less likely to vote for the parcel tax if you knew the annual rate was $15 a year? And that worked. And no other rate worked, which was by a large amount. And this surprised me. Now, there might have been a little difficulty in the way the question was asked. We maybe should have asked it one or two other ways to get a little bit better sense, but it's pretty clear that a very large percentage of people, once they hear the word tax, and once they hear those dollars, they're just not there. $45 a year doesn't even break 30%. And that's a hurdle. Now, I don't think the hurdle is 15. I think you can take that up to 1950. But the moment you get into that other category, I think it's tough. We also looked at time sensitivity. And as has already been pointed out, you know, doing it for 3 years just doesn't make sense because you do it and then you come back. You know, within 2 years, you're back in front of the voters. 5 years is pretty close. Clearly, when you start getting into 7, 12, no limit, that doesn't work. So I would say, you know, 4 years, 5 years probably works. After we have given people this information, and remember we're talking in this case about the $49 version, we then come back to them and say, now that you've heard more information about how these funds would be used, you want to change your vote, in other words, and they don't. In fact, it got a little worse in this one, 56% yes. We then divided these voters into 3 groups to see how it would compare if you were a reliable voter, and that's a voter that votes in every election. They voted in the last 4 out of 4 or 3 out of 3. Or on the other end of the scale, a very unreliable voter. You've only voted in that 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 3. See, is there, and then reliable, somewhere in the middle. Is there a big difference in the yes vote? And there is, obviously. The very reliable voter who tends to be more conservative is not supportive. We still don't hit 2/3 with the reliable or the unreliable voter, but we get a lot closer with both of them. Turning to page 25, we have the same question before and after for the $25. That goes up a little bit, but remember we have a margin of error of 5%, so I don't think it's significant. So there's not really much change in this. In this case, it goes from 59 to 61. Same thing, we divide those voters into very reliable, reliable, and unreliable. Interestingly, in this case, the very reliable do better than the reliable, and I'm not sure what to make of that. I've never seen that before. But there's not as much variability in this lower amount, which is good. Then for the $49 rate, I took this, I have a lot more information that I won't go through, but I thought you'd be interested in seeing it broken down by political party. Even Democrats at $49 are just barely there. And the no political party or decline to state, not there. Republicans, not there. At the $49 rate. At the $29 rate, it looks better. Everybody moves a little bit, but you're still not grabbing the decline to state voter. So based on all of this, maybe I should stop before I give recommendations and see if there's any questions about the data itself or the results.
Any questions from board members? So I have a question, Scott, Mr. Scott. So the age selection for this survey, was there specific reasons for they were picked the way they were selected regarding age?
No. What they do is the firms that do the surveying is they, once they get all of the answers in from all of the respondents, then they do some balancing. And by that I mean, this is a close representation of what your registered voter turnout, registered voters looks like. And so if they said, oh, we have, and occasionally it happens, and it's the same with Republicans and Democrats and males and females. If you have something that's way off the registration, then they'll start eliminating some people and sometimes even going back into the field and interviewing additional people in order to get some balance. So it's not like they're going out and trying to select certain people. They're trying to balance it so it's representational.
And then also for the percentage of homeowner versus non-homeowners, is that also the representation of the district
No,
wide voters?
it is not. That is simply how it turned out, because you don't have that data as in the voter files. This is just how it turned out in terms of the people that answered the question. And so I don't know if this is relational to your voter population or not.
But it is probably would relate to how they answer the questions, right? I mean,
yes, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. The renter is going to be more supportive.
Thank you.
So any other question? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. So total, how many people that took the survey?
406, I think that's the right number.
Okay, 406 people took the survey. All of those 406 people finished the whole survey, or some of them will be, they might, cancel at the mid of the conversation?
No, 405, and they completed the survey, the entire survey.
Okay, and how many ethnic group in that 406 people that took the survey?
I don't know, but we did not offer translation services. But I don't know what the breakdown was ethnically.
On page 21, can you move back to page 21 for me, please? Okay, so on the page 21, it looked like for $15 per year has the most, approval based on the survey, correct?
Correct.
And technically is $15 per year. Does that make any difference in terms of based on the survey? If we will likely to give it a chance.
You're asking, would it make a difference if you used $15 as opposed to another number?
Yes.
Yes, yes, I think so. I think your chances of winning are larger to staying below $20 than they would be if you used, for example, $45. And that's the odd thing about a parcel tax, is it's right down to the dollars you're going to spend every year, not some cents per 100,000 that is very difficult to calculate for some people. This is, would you pay, in this example, $15 per year?
What my thoughts are, because we have a large community, Hispanic and Vietnamese in the district, I don't know that the response from each category would make or break it you know, the survey or not. But I just skeptical about, you know, when the survey result come back, um, you know, the percentage of the ethnic group will answer those survey. I don't know that would make any more difference or not, or based on 406 people that we make the survey compare with 230,000 residents in the district. Is that percentage of the people that took the survey, is that reflected, you know, the big number when you take a look of the whole survey result?
It is surprisingly accurate. I know it within range of understanding. Occasionally, it doesn't exactly work right, but you know, without going into too much detail, you can think of it as the similar in the example that I was always taught. If you had a huge jar with 1,000 black marbles in it, or let's say 900 black marbles in it, and you put in 100 white marbles, so it equaled 1,000. 10% of those are white, and you mixed it all up. Had somebody put a blindfold on, put their hand in, pulled out a marble. They have a 1 in 10 chance that one of those marbles is going to be white. And that's sort of the same concept here. We're not saying this is exact. We're saying by asking people, broadly based in terms of their age, their gender, their political affiliation, how do they feel about these questions, you're going to get a pretty good version of how those people feel. And what I found is that with some certain exceptions, and you may have pointed out one of them, that these polls come within 10% one way or the other of accuracy when we get down to the date of the election. Now things can change. This is about where you are now. In 100 days, things may be very different, and it's going to be a little more difficult to determine. But if you're trying to get a sense what's the best direction to go now, I would use these numbers rather than anything you've done in the past, because they're the most accurate, especially during this pandemic period.
Does any other district use the parcel tax under $45?
Oh yeah, yes.
Which are they?
I don't have a list of them with me, but I'm happy to get that for you. But parcel taxes range from a very low amount, and then districts start raising them up over time. And then they go up to the very, very high amount. There are parcel taxes for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a year. So it's all over the map.
And in the past several years, the parcel tax that we, you know, that we have done in the past several years, the result come back is we shine away like few percentage of the survey that we took. I mean, I want to see the comparison, you know, from the survey that what we did in the past and the result come back and what that we plan to have the survey this time, you know, what would they correlated or not?
Mm-hmm. I don't have those surveys, but my recollection in reading those is that those surveys, and you've done 3, I think, have been higher than the actual vote that came in. Not by a lot, but they've been higher. And of course, you were very close in the last election that you tried this, but still not 2/3.
Okay. Now we have Bowen Bokatesi. You have your hand up for a while. You have questions that need to be clarified.
Yeah, thank you. Dale, I just wanted to see if you could confirm my assumption. So first of all, the graph that you have posted there, I'm not sure exactly what that blue line is, but it looks like it's like we're barely within the 4 point whatever percent margin of error there, right?
Correct.
So that's one concern. And I also, you know, based on what you shared earlier about the voters being presented with the $49 number and then voters being presented with the exact same scenario with the $24 number and it didn't make any difference, tells me that we would really, really, really have to educate people that this is $15. Because I think what I see in that is that people are just looking at tax, no thanks. But if people really get, this is like $1.25 a month or something, right? That they might be willing to do it, but that you couldn't do that without probably a pretty heavy education campaign. Would you say that's correct? Like just to, if we just put it on the ballot and hope people read the details that would figure it out, do you think that could work?
I think at the lower rate, it could. I think if you were going to go anything over that, yes, you'd have to educate a lot. You know, to be blunt, it's going to be very difficult in these circumstances to run much of an information campaign. You know, the idea of, you know, voter outreach is going to be very different. Now, it really comes down to digital. And then there are also some programs that do, you know, telephonic town halls and things like that, which can reach out and touch people. But given the number of voters that you have and the cost and the competition you're going to have for eyeballs, it would be tough to raise enough money to communicate effectively with voters on a measure like this. And if that's your thinking, that we can only do this if we mount a effective, large-scale communication campaign, I'm not sure if I would go there. I think that's going to be very tough to pull off in this environment.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Herrera.
Okay, I'm maybe jumping ahead here or deducing more than is actually there, but I'm starting to read tea leaves here that your professional sense of all of this is that it's less than 50-50, not that we couldn't choose to go for it, but when you aggregate the indicators and so on, we could choose to do it, but I don't get from you that there's a strong case for a yes, you know.
Well, here's, you know, I guess I wouldn't put it quite like that, but I understand your point. As I showed you to begin with, I'm convinced if this district is ever going to pass a parcel tax, it needs to be on a presidential election. You need that extra turnout of voters to show up that are supportive of education. And that happens and has happened for the last couple of decades. The problem is this is a different election. It's going to be very hard to communicate. And as I showed you with that other slide, you have 2/3 of the voters who are saying they're concerned about their financial future. That's a tough one. Now, the problem is we're reading this in July. They're voting in October. And I don't know what that's going to be. That could be better. That could be worse. It is going to be probably different, however. Financially, I'm betting it's going to be a little better, but that's just a bet. But if you were to not proceed, and you know, I think that's a jump ball. If you were to not proceed, then the next logical time for you to consider this would be in the next presidential election. And you just got to keep that in mind. You know, when a person that says, no, I don't think we should do it, then the next question is, okay, then when do you think you should do it? And if the answer is not at all, then that's easy. But if it's no, we've got to do it sometime, well, it's going to be 4 years. So you are right. I'm not feeling extraordinarily confident, but I am more confident in putting a lower amount on a presidential election than I would be putting a higher amount on a gubernatorial election, regardless of the pandemic. But to one last thing, to one of your board members' comments already, and I think is valid and to be considered, you know, $15, $19 is not produce the kind of funds that may be hoped for. But it does get you in the door, assuming it passes.
Any board member has any questions or comment? So what is your recommendation, Mr. Scott?
You can go to slide 30. I would give you two alternatives, which I've already kind of tipped my hand. One is if you were to get on the ballot, I would keep it at that below $20 rate in the 15 to 1975 range. That would produce gross revenues of from about 1.8 million to almost 2.5 million. Now remember, those are gross revenues. That doesn't include any funds that would be lost because of the senior exemption. I'd keep the duration of the parcel tax no more than 5 years, and I would maintain the senior exemption. Alternatively, I'd look at it in November of 22, maybe retest and see how things are going. I don't think it's going to be a great election for these types of measures in 2022, but time will tell. And then, of course, November 24 being the next presidential election. So it's either November 2020 or really a delay of 2 to 4 years.
Do you know any other district has a parcel tax on the ballot?
In your county?
Yeah.
No, I am not aware of any. That's not to say there aren't any, but I'm not aware of any.
There are, Vaughn, there's parcel tax, there's bonds, there's a good amount of stuff happening in this election. I think also because it's a presidential election, so.
And there's schools and communities first, Prop 15, Prop 15 also.
That's right, yeah. It's a busy time.
So how much, oh, okay. How much does it cost the district generally if we either go $15 per partial or $19.75 per partial?
Well, your only real, I mean, there are some operational costs. They're not significant. The largest cost is the cost of the county of running the election. And I believe that has been, I believe Chris Drew has the number, but my recollection is he told me the estimate was 300,000.
300,000.
Mr. Drew?
For just the parcel tax or the combined parcel tax and the board re-election?
Or just the parcel tax?
The board re-election is over 800,000 and the partial tax is about what, Chris, 340?
340, yeah, another 350 on top of that. So it's easily over $1 million.
What? Like,
Well, the board re-election is not optional though. I mean, it's not like we're not voting to whether we're going to have a board election. I mean, we have to do that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, oh yeah, we can just do away with the board election, right?
Mr. Drew, can you repeat what you just said? You said 340 plus
But,
another 300 on top of that?
yeah, so set aside the board re-election. That cost has been coming in, or we anticipate that cost to be about 800,000. That's a given cost. But to put the parcel tax on the November election, I think Dale got an estimate of about 350,000, a little give or take.
Okay, so we need to separate the two of them, because with partial tax, we have an option whether to put in the ballot or not. With the board election, there's no option. And
Yeah,
whether we-
I don't think we're talking about that though. I just heard the 300 twice, which was my question, but it sounds like it's just like the 340, 350 for the parcel tax, correct?
For the parcel only, correct.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure we were clear.
And to be clear, that's a one-time cost.
Okay.
Can I ask that last few years, how much does it cost us to put the parcel tax on the ballot? Is that because the difference between the parcel tax rate from $15 or $49, is that big difference, or how does it look into it?
It has nothing to do with the amount of the parcel tax. It has to do with how many other items there are on the ballot. So they take their total costs and they divide it among the various agencies, including the state, that are putting items on the ballot. So if you're the only item, or there's only a few items, then your costs go up. Presidential election, a lot of items, costs go down.
And Chris, how much campaign financial that we raised last time? I feel that, you know, if we want to do the parcel tax, but we don't have a financial backup campaign, I don't think we'll be successful anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right time to be going out and asking for funding. So when we did the last parcel, it was about 142,000 was our campaign. So I don't see us being able to reach that amount this year.
Well, then I think it's will be difficult to raise money as well as to make this parcel tax successfully, you know, out with the voter. That's what I feel, that we don't have the backup financial campaign, as well as, you know, the especially during pandemic, during the most difficult time with financial. That's my opinion, that, you know, it's going to be very hard to succeed with the parcel tax, even though with $15.
Yeah.
So, question for Superintendent. Do you have a position on this, or have you arrived at some kind of determination for yourself, apart from the board, regarding moving forward or not?
Well, I think for the long term, we eventually have to get this over the goal line, as Dale mentioned, in the smallest amount possible. I think that's worthwhile. You know, I guess it's just a cost ratio. If it's 350,000 to put it on the ballot for potentially 1.5 to 1.8 million over 5 years, is that a good enough analysis? I do not think it's worth trying to fundraise and actually put in a campaign. So if we were to move forward, I would recommend just putting it on the ballot and seeing what happens. Because when you think about the last time when we lost by about 666 votes, we actually hired an outside agency firm to do the campaign for us. Well, that alone was almost $50,000. And we don't have that in our current account left over from the housing campaign. So I just think and the single largest donation the last time was from the Charter School Association, because we had a pro rata share going to if we were to do that again, we'd be getting almost less than $1 million a year. And so I would say, let's do this without doing the charter school pro rata share. And that just makes it even harder to campaign because of their significant contribution.
Bill, can you repeat the amount, the percentage of voters that would potentially say yes with the $14, $15? Was it like 72% or something like that?
That's correct. 71 and a half, 72%.
Okay, and you said it could go 5% either way.
Yes.
So we're like right on the line.
Yes.
I mean, I'm holding that. I'm also holding what you said, Patty, about like a campaign but I mean, I think regardless of how much people hear tax, yeah, and they might not even pay attention to the amount as much.
And I do know that between Berryessa, Mount Pleasant, Evergreen Elementary, I'm not sure if Oak Grove is going again, but they're going for either a parcel or a bond.
Yeah.
And then I know that San Jose Evergreen Community, San Jose City College is potentially going for another construction bond. So,
yeah,
you know, if I have kids in elementary, I'm probably going to vote for that bond or parcel before they vote for the high school one, because they're going to get hit twice.
That's right.
It all depends on where we fall. Maybe we fall ahead of those districts and we get lucky by what letter we get.
Well, and it seems like what Dale said show earlier, what is this? Almost 60% or 61 or 59% or so say that they do not have either children or grandchildren to live that are going to high school in the district.
Yeah.
So
I think the other thing for the board to consider too is from what I've read, the Communities in First measure is struggling. And even if it were to pass, I think there's going to be enough lawsuits to keep that thing where we won't see revenue for years to come. So this is really our only opportunity in the next 4 years to try to get some revenue that we get to keep.
I have a question for Dale Scott again. The strategy that the superintendent is speculating, which is about putting the measure on the ballot and not trying to mount a campaign in these difficult times, but see what happens. Is there a downside to that in terms of if it fails, that we would be looking at either 4 years or 2 years to try again? Are we somehow using up some voter goodwill by running that type of a campaign? Just put it on the ballot.
I don't believe so. I don't think voters remember what has happened 6 months ago, let alone 2 to 4 years ago. I would, however, make sure that there was a strong information, modest but strong information campaign. So information was distributed out to your parents and to voters in the most economical way possible. So it's not just, even though the superintendent said just put it on the ballot and try, I'd make sure that there was as much information, free information, as could get out there as possible, not advocacy information where you had to run a campaign.
Examples
and then
of free information approaches are what?
Well, I think when it's not going to be free, but I think a good example is one I already said, which is having some sort of I don't know if any of you ever worked on a teletown hall. I mean, that's something that districts have been using. I mean, candidates have used for a long time. I think districts can use it, where you're having essentially a town hall, but it's on the telephone. You're trying to have voters. You're calling voters, asking them if they'd like to talk to the superintendent and the board president, ask them questions about it. So you're trying to get that information out to voters in a way that's not advocacy. The other thing I didn't mention is there's not a lot of changes I make, but remember that ballot language that I read to you. That's what we thought the ballot language would be. Based on these results, that ballot language would change a little bit and would be, try to be a little more, little friendlier and emphasize a little bit more of the positives. So there's a little bit places we can clip around the edges. But in terms of running a major campaign, not running a major campaign, I don't see that as a downside for the future.
Okay. Thank you.
So Chris, if we don't put this parcel tax this year, then the opportunity we could do it in 2022, correct?
That's correct.
So at least we save for 350,000, but we know that at next year, the budget and everything people will put together and make this parcel tax successfully on 2022. That is what the thought that I have, that bounce back and forth. If we lose this year and we lose 350,000, then the 2022, we probably gonna run again a parcel tax on 2022 because we still have a deficit. So I was want to think that if we want to throw it away 350,000 now, or well, we're gonna play a game to see if it's my, it's my comeback successfully rate. But with the number that, even though with $15 per year on page 21 that Dale Scott, brought back to us on the survey, I still feel very skeptical with the money that we don't have it, and we can use that 350,000 for the budget that we needed now. And when that, next year, when the deficit will come back, everybody will come together and help maybe a larger amount of parcel tax. So something that I think that's maybe probably more realistic than gamble 350,000 for this year. And we don't know what's happened because we don't have financial campaign. And right now during the pandemic and the result, the people don't live in the district. Well, they live in district, but they don't have enough children in the district. So it's very, a lot of questions that I feel that, we should not, waste 350,000 rather than wait for the next time.
The problem I'm having with that approach, Vaughn, is that the odds are significantly less in a gubernatorial election, which would be 2022, and significantly greater in a presidential election, which is either this year or 4 years away, when you combine a presidential election with a lower rate of 15 or under $20, there seems to be a pretty solid base of voters who might go for it in spite of us not mounting an expensive campaign,
If I may just point out one, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I hope you understand. That's why I gave you two alternatives. But I do want to point out that the gubernatorial campaign in 2022 does have some potential problems to consider. That right now, of course, things can change very quickly, as we know. But right now, that looks to be a gubernatorial election with a Democratic incumbent running for re-election. And in those cases, that has been a very low turnout. Again, things could change, but right now, from where I'm standing, that does not look like a high turnout election. And then that takes you to 2024.
I agree with that analysis that in terms of voter turnout, we will get probably the greatest turnout for presidential election this year in a long time. So because of that, you might get a lot of people who haven't voted for a long time to come out and vote, in addition to the new voters. The biggest challenge that we have is probably the COVID-19, the pandemic. People don't know about the financial situation or outlook, going out. It could be worse, it could be better, we don't know, but that's the uncertainty. But the good thing outside is we have more voters coming out this November than probably ever before. So that's a good thing. And you probably have more Democrat voters coming out to vote this November than ever before. So I think that's also something that's positive. But this COVID-19 there's so much uncertainty, so.
But I could think that even though we have more people to come out and vote, but does not mean that they will vote on those parcel tax or bond. They might look only for those position like president, or they look into state assembly, or other position, if they really pay attention. But I think it's for parcel and bond during the pandemic, and because we don't have a good financial campaign mechanism. So I feel skeptical about this. Even though last few years, we have very good support from ESTA, from CSEA, from everyone from the community, we still are under, the threshold. So that's why make me feel we have tried, but I know that maybe it's not the right time, but now the pandemic also happened. Is the right time or not? So it's never know when it's the right time or not the right time. But I just don't feel that we want to gamble with 350,000 to get $1.8 million, but we still don't know that, the people to vote this year, do they just vote only presidential position, or they're going to look into all the position that they're going to vote? You never know it either, right?
You don't know, that's why there's always that uncertainty. But
yeah.
But if we don't go this year, it's unlikely we have a better chance in 2022, just for the same reason that Dale has just mentioned. That people won't be as enthusiastic in 2022 as they do now. So I don't know. So I mean, so I think we need to make a. So this is on the agenda for also action or non-action.
Yes, for action.
Huh?
It's on the agenda for action for us to bring back the resolution if you choose to move forward at the August board meeting. But we need direction tonight to know to bring that forward.
I like to ask Dale one more question. Dale, is COVID, I mean, I heard us talk minimally about COVID in deciding which way to go, whether to go for putting this on the ballot or not. Has your company learned anything about that specifically that we should take into consideration? Or is there just like no significant difference due to COVID that we should take into account when making a decision?
Well, I think you are already. I think the reason it's $15 to $19 has come from that first question, which is because of this crisis, are you scared for your financial future? I think that's really driving it more than anything. Now, on the flip side, and the board president mentioned this somewhat, you have another thing that's working in the opposite direction, and that is in a highly democratic district, you have a presidential candidate that is going to drive turnout. I mean, that is going to really drive turnout of Democrats, regardless of whether they're voting for mail by mail, regardless of the pandemic, in my opinion. So I think it flips both ways.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Well, and I mean, the more thing, think about it, I'm leaning toward having this partial tax, on the ballot. And the reason is that you mentioned, even though now it's just $15 a year, $15 a year, it's a cost of a cup of coffee a year. It's not as bad. But in the future, there's an opportunity to put it back out with an extension where we can raise from $15 to, I don't know, 20, 25 or something, right? And if we already have it there, it's easier for the voter to vote for an extension rather than a new partial tax. That's another way of looking at it as well.
I mean,
I'd like,
yeah, I just think there should be, well, it sounds like if we were to put this on the ballot, there would be no formal campaign, or at least not hiring of an agency or somebody to support us with this. But I think there has to be some sort of something, right? Something to the extent of what Dale said, plus a few other strategies that we can execute in-house to make sure that there's some communication that doesn't necessarily require us to fundraise money, but it will require us to execute, whether it's us as board members or in-house within, things that already exist. But there has to be something. We can't just say, oh, we're just going to put this on the ballot and cross our fingers that something's going to happen.
Yeah, let me just add to that, Lorena, that, the most expensive part of a campaign is mailers. And I think our voters are going to be inundated with mailers for all the different offices that are up for election. So, we have just about 40,000 or so in our campaign account. And if we just focus on digital, we'll get a bigger bang for our buck, and we will be able to do something. And, we have a great director of marketing that knows all about digital. And then there's other things that we can do district-wide where it's not advocacy, but we're just telling the story that we can do through the district. So I agree there would be some type of campaign, just not a formal campaign where we're out trying to raise money.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Because even phone banks, that's a lot right there, but like actually doing it, right? Not just saying, cross your fingers. Communicate with anybody.
It require all the board members going out there being the mouthpiece for the district, talking about this.
Yeah, something to that extent. Yep.
It could involve all board members putting all this on our social media, Facebook, whatever, to all of our people in our network.
100%. Yep, exactly. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
I'd like some clarification. Every time I hear an amount mentioned, whether it's $15 or a different figure, I always interpret that to mean, for example, $15 per $100 of assessed valuation. Is that not what we mean? Or we don't really mean $15 a year, do we?
Yes, you do. It's actually $15 or $19 or whatever rate you set per parcel. So
per parcel.
So that doesn't mean whether it's a vacant lot or a lot with a $15 million house on it. It's $15
per parcel annually. Whatever
per parcel annually. Correct.
Okay, great.
For someone, it's 3 cups of coffee a year.
And the senior age start when? 62 or 65 or 67?
I believe it's 65, I believe.
Okay.
Gosh, at an annual rate, and did people drop off steeply when you get to $45 per year per parcel? Jeez.
They do. They do.
Wow.
So how about the business? Do they have to pay also or no?
Yes.
The business also by building, by parcel, they have to pay $15 per year.
Correct.
If this parcel tax pass.
Correct.
Oh.
I'm leaning the same way Board President Nguyen is leaning in terms of rolling the dice, and nothing is nothing is ideal. And I just don't see 2022 as being a year at all to try to similarly take risks, which means we either do it now or in 4 years. And every time we do it, it's going to cost. It's just part of the way it works. And, you know, if we have 40,000 to start with and can mount a more sophisticated digital campaign and parallel that with an information campaign that we can legitimately do just in communicating with our parents and constituencies, you know, we don't have to do the high expense targeted mailers, and we can still give it a shot. So I'm just leaning, nothing is ideal, and I'm just leaning towards that set of risks versus the other sets of risks.
We need a motion. Is that your motion?
I was waiting to hear other comments.
I'm not seeing anything here that really suggests that that we have a formula for success here. You know, when I look at the slides on 15 and 16, when you add up the yes, the no, and the undecideds, you don't even really have enough to get there, like barely. Like literally every single 100% of all those people would have to vote to barely eke in. So
is that for the lower rates?
Yes.
That's for 49 and for 24.
Okay,
But
well, under 20.
no, I understand, but I'm just saying that when you compare those two and realize that it doesn't make a difference, lowering the rate by half basically doesn't make a difference in those two categories.
But it does when you go under 20. The numbers change dramatically.
But sort of. I mean, you're still within 5%, the 5% margin of error at 68%. I mean, you'd have to. To me, this says you'd have to do like a flawless campaign,
Right.
to get there.
I agree with Patty. And we don't have any resources. We have only what, 3 months, less than 2 months, right? And right now, even though school back, the parents are also busy, with students are also busy to embrace the new challenge, you know, of the school reopen. I agree with Patty on this, and I feel very skeptical. I don't want to throw at 350,000. We might need that 350,000 for something else.
We definitely do. I actually had a conversation with someone who participated in the survey, and she voluntarily told me, I'm not supporting your parcel tax. So that sort of took me aback, right? And this is someone who I ordinarily would have thought would have been a champion for it. So, and she's also someone who would have been exempt.
Yeah, I don't feel strongly actually one way or the other here, because you can weigh it, you can see it half empty, half full, whatever the metaphor. So I'm not like passionately on position. So I'm curious, Lorena, where you are.
I asked Dale that same question, like to what exact number were we at with the 5% give or take? I'm not 100% convinced, y'all.
So just know that if we don't do it now, it'll be the earliest is 2024. So even though if we don't, let's say if it is a gamble, of course it's a gamble for $340,000. But if we're able to win, it will add what, at least $1.something million into our already reduced budget. And if we work as hard as we can to make it help it pass, otherwise we look at going to be more layoff. So with this, even the $15 a year, it will help with how many positions per year for 5 years or more. So look at it that way. And our bargaining units are stakeholders. Even though right now we don't have them on board for support, but if they see this help their membership, they will help. Either one way or another, either money or some other way.
I'm wondering if it makes sense, if it would make sense to authorize the administration to bring the resolution to the August 6th meeting with an understanding that the board is leaning towards not putting it on the ballot, but it would give us another round of stakeholder input, you know.
I think that's too late.
August 6th is too late?
Well, isn't the filing deadline the 7th?
7th.
Yes.
It's very
Oh.
close.
Because we would be authorizing them to prepare. You're muted, Chris. Chris,
Thank you. We have to bring it back regardless on the 7th, at the next board meeting on the 6th. Tonight, there's no resolution. So we didn't want to be that bold and assume you'd go one way or the other tonight. So yes, we would have to think about who we'd give for to sign and have to jump on that the day after to get it done. But I would say let's not go after if we choose, we put this back, we bring the resolution to August 6th, even though the board might be leaning towards not approving it. But if the board does approve it, I don't think we go after the same normal people that we've done in the past to be signers. I think we go local. We go and we ask the 3 presidents of our unions to sign it. We ask local people, and then on the argument rebuttal, then maybe we go for the council members that live or represent our district. I think that will be doable.
but that would be teed up by the 6th so that they would just be ready to roll if somehow there was a decision to go forward. We
Correct.
would start doing it, you know, on the morning of the 7th.
If I can be clear, the resolution, if you passed it on the 6th, would need to be filed on the 7th.
Right.
Then there's about a week that goes by before you have to file the argument in favor. So the argument in favor does not have to be filed at the same time.
Oh,
Even more time.
that's even better. So again, what I'm suggesting is let's authorize the administration to do the prep work, recognizing that there's really a leaning of the board towards not putting it on the ballot, but giving it one final opportunity for some input from
Well,
whoever.
I am supporting to put on the ballot. And my argument is that for $250,000, that's about 4 positions. And we risk that if we get $1.8 million, we could save about, what, 20, 25 positions per year. So that's my argument.
Yeah,
And
well,
I'm
I mean, but
supporting
we're
it.
hearing each other right now. We're not hearing other folks who are going to recognize that we're at a decision point. We're no longer speculative. We have to decide. And that might bring some people forward to actually speak, you know. And it may sway, listening to each other, board members and community members, stakeholders, we might find ourselves actually agreeing by the end of public comment and public discussion, whether to not put it on or to put it on.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess,
Chris, is it a lot of work for the admin to prep this stuff for us to be like, yes, maybe no?
The resolution is already written, and the hardest work is just driving around afterwards to get the signatures. And the fact that we're in COVID, driving around makes it actually easier. There's no traffic.
Okay.
Everyone's at their home.
You can't get away if you wanted to. Okay, great. I just want to make sure that we don't put a significant amount of work on the admin for us to be like, maybe not. Okay, great. Thank you.
okay, anything else?
So can we agree then that we'll authorize the administration to do the prep work? This is not a vote, it's just a consensus thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay,
Okay,
Sure, yeah.
Sure. And then the actual motion and vote would be on the 6th.
decision is on the 6th.
All right. Okay. All right.
All right, great.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. Thank you,
Thank you.
staff, everybody. So now, wait,
For closed
now
session.
we'll recess the closed session, and then we'll come out when it is completed.
And, okay,
Public comment for closed session.
Any public comment for closed session? I don't see anybody. So closed session number 501, does anyone have any comment regarding closed session? Calling once, twice. Okay, so no comment for closed session. The board will now recess to closed session. Hello again, everybody. We are now returning from closed session. It is agenda number 6, resume open session via Zoom video conferencing. Number 7, report closed session action items. Council, do you want to do the reporting of closed session actions?
Yes. Closed session item 5.03. Motion by member Herrera, second by member Lay. The board unanimously approved the employment of Brandy Mayhew as the Director of Bond Purchasing and Contracts. Also closed session item 5.03. Motion by member Chavez, second by member Cortese. The board unanimously approved the employment of Alberto Solorzano as Associate Principal at Mount Pleasant High School. There are no further actions to report.
Okay, thank you very much. The meeting is now adjourned. A great meeting. Good night. See you back here August 6th.